Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. Parents can send instant money transfers, automate allowance, and more. Plus, keep an eye on spending with real-time notifications. Join more than 6 million parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get your first month free at greenlight.com/ACAST. That's greenlight.com/ACAST.
Many of us have those stubborn pounds that seem impossible to lose, no matter how good we eat or how hard we work out. My solution is PlushCare. PlushCare is a leading telehealth provider with doctors who are there for you day and night to partner with you in your weight loss journey. They can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound for those who qualify. Plus, they accept most insurance plans. To get started, visit plushcare.com/weightloss. That's plushcare.com/weightloss.
It's unfortunate that Black fathers being absent is still a stereotype that exists. But I believe it's a stereotype that has long outlived any truth. The reality is, present Black fathers is not an anomaly. It's not some sort of special outlier, but the norm. The reality is, today, whether married or unmarried, 60% of Black fathers live at home with their children. And that's not including the many fathers that do not live at home with their children for whatever reason, but are still active in their life. But that doesn't erase the fact that many Black millennial children were raised without fathers, or without fathers that were actually positive influences on them, or fathers that were physically present and also emotionally present. So what happens when that generation grows up and begins to try to shift the narrative, particularly in the area of verbal and physical affection? Because the reality is, though many Black fathers are present in their children's life, that's not to say that they have grown up understanding just how much freedom there is for them to affectionately love their children verbally and physically. I think of a book that I read called Will to Change by Bell Hooks. It's a really good book. It was one of the most influential books on my life in the past few years. It just did a lot for me. And it's a feminist critique of masculinity in America, particularly Black masculinity in America. And there are parts of the book where she goes through all the different barriers and obstacles that Black men have to overcome within a culture of patriarchy, a culture that not only victimizes women, but ultimately is victimizing men as well. It robs them of many parts of their genuine humanity, of the freedom of their humanity to love people well. And so she goes through these lists of things, whether it be abuse or neglect or the culture around them, absentee fathers, all these different things that would somehow set a man on a trajectory to do as bad or worse than the men that came before him, the men that were around him growing up. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking through how my dad turned out to be this affectionate, loving father. We say "I love you" every time before we say goodbye on the phone or anywhere. I've kissed my dad on the cheek or the neck since I can remember. We still do. He's never really had a problem with being very huggy, and so I thought to myself, how did he end up like that? Considering all of his circumstances. And there are a lot of men who are going to have to make very intentional changes, very intentional actions toward growth in love and being tender towards not just the women in their lives, but just people, man, just people. And then part of that also, I think, which is displayed in my father, is this sort of wave of grace that comes to an anomaly in the matrix, man, where someone who, considering all of their circumstances, should have turned out one way, did not. They just didn't. And that's my father. And it's ironic that I'm recording this portion of the episode on June 21st. It is Father's Day here. Well, everywhere. It's Father's Day. But June 21st is also the 40th anniversary of my parents' marriage. The 40th year that my father and my wonderful mother have continued in this union to love each other and to serve each other and to care for each other till death do them part. And it's one of the best things that my father could have given to me as a man is the stark contrast to what the culture says a man should be and how a man should view women and his woman and how he should treat her. Like, he stands in stark contrast to what the popular narrative would say. And that's been a beautiful gift. So this episode is actually the first episode I ever recorded for Flights and Feelings, ironically, the conversation you're about to hear. But I just never put it out. I recorded this back in January. And considering the narrative around race right now, and then this sort of brief overlap in talking about fatherhood on Father's Day, I thought this would be a great episode, a great timing for this episode. And for y'all to just kind of eavesdrop on a conversation between me and my father.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Flights and Feelings Airlines Flight 1 with nonstop service from Chicago to Atlanta. My name is Joseph. I will be your flight attendant, assisted by our Atlanta-based cabin crew. We ask that you please fasten your seatbelts and secure all baggage.
What's going on, family? My name is Joseph Solomon. I'm a singer, songwriter, poet, spoken word artist, YouTuber, lifelong student, ever doubtful or curious Christian, frequent flyer, black son. Welcome to the 10th flight of the Flights and Feelings podcast, where we thoughtfully and vulnerably travel through faith, relationships, sexuality, science, health, and culture via storytelling, poetry, and conversation. Yeah, how would you describe the relationship with your father, your biological father, growing up?
Well, there wasn't a relationship in terms of everyday norm, father and son, waking up and seeing my dad. It wasn't that. I was in foster home for the majority of my life, of my childhood life. So I didn't have that relationship that I have with you. Yeah. And so whenever I could see my father, I was happy. That was the gist of my relationship, that I got a chance to see him. I never really lived with him except for one summer. So I knew my father as my father, not as my dad, to the point that I called him by his nickname, not even his first name, his nickname. His nickname was
You called
Buddy.
him Buddy?
I called him Buddy. I never called him Dad or Father.
Wow, I didn't know that. So
You were raised in foster care. For a lot of people, that means that your father wasn't present at all, but in some odd way, he was still there. But to fill in those gaps, what was your relation to other men, like the men that were in your life, the men, whether it be foster fathers, like that stuff? I don't think I've really asked a lot of questions about that. Like, who were the men that were in your life, and were they affectionate towards you? Did you have that?
Well, I was in 6 different foster homes, all the way up until I was 18. I remember one foster home. It was just a little old lady that took in a lot of kids, and but the other fathers that I went to that had fathers, homes that I went to that had fathers, no, they really didn't express. They expressed care, but not love. Mm-hmm. You know, in a humane way. In a, hey, you don't have a place, so I'm gonna take you in.
Yeah.
But you can see they draw the line between foster children and their own.
Oh, yeah.
So, yes, they did care for me. I wouldn't use the word love.
I remember, I'll tell a story. I had ran away I called myself running away from home. I don't know what it was, because I went like 3 blocks away, and you knew where I was, and you came straight to the house that I was at, and all my friends lied to me. I was in the backyard. Yeah, I was around the corner, and I don't know what I was mad for, but I was even sneaking back in the house, like during the day. I was at work. I think it was the summertime. I would sneak back in the house, grab some snacks and stuff, because I was hungry. I didn't have a job. I think I was in 8th grade, and I called myself running away, and I was going to run away. But then, just to show how bad my running away skills were, I ended up that night at Fred's house, which is right around literally his backyard touches our backyard.
Yes.
You can climb the fence and be in his backyard. Yes. And so I was outside with my bike, and you came around, and that time, I think it was in that Dodge Caravan, and you pulled up and you said, "Come on, let's go home." And I had my bike, and so I don't remember if I put my bike in the car. I think I just rode around the corner, and whatever happened in that between time, I remember getting home, and the first thing you asked me was, "Are you hungry? Do you want some Burger King?" And I thought it was a trick, because I'm like, "Nah, fam, I'm not getting nobody's call. I'm good." Like, I had been gone all day, again, running away. I didn't even spend the night, so I was gone for a full day without telling y'all where I went, and I was so fearful that something would happen. And so there was 2 fears that were residing there, though, and one was I was fearful that I was going to get my butt whooped. That was fear number 1. That just was like, I've been gone all day. But the second type of fear that I had was, you didn't even whoop me that night, which was strange. And that irked me, because I couldn't even go to sleep that night, because I was like, I think he's going to let me go to sleep. And then but that didn't happen. But I think something even more triggering and influential happened instead. I really felt the disappointment that I gave to you. And that is the type of fear that I had of not wanting to disappoint this man who's poured so much into my life and who's loved me so well. And so, yeah, there is that fear of I don't want my butt whooped. But then there was like, when you have a healthy relationship with your father, one of the fears that you have is letting them down. And I think that's a healthy fear, not letting them down in the sense of like they can, because I never felt like you controlled my life. You always allowed, like, whatever career path I was trying to go, I was exploring so many different things. And you never said you have to do this. So I never felt that fear. Like, if I don't choose the right thing, if I don't choose the right wife or whatever it may be, I never felt that type of pressure from you. You were very, very clear on doing that. But I still, even with all that freedom, I still felt this fear of like, this healthy fear that pushed me to, I want to make you proud. I think that every son feels that, whether they had a good father or a bad father, there is something innate in a son that says, look at what I did, Daddy. I want you to be proud of it.
I remember me running away from my foster home and coming back. I did not get the same reaction and response that I gave you.
What was the response?
It was a bad response. It was. They did tell me to go to sleep, go upstairs and take a bath. And then once I took my bath, as I began to take my bath, she busts in the bathroom and just literally she had to switch a belt, and it was just crazy. And so I remember those kind of things, and I never wanted that to happen to my children. I never wanted to have that built in me. And I think a lot of times men take their childhood and bring it over into their marriages, and they allow it to deal with their children the same way that they were brought up.
But how does that? But how did that become different for you then? That's one thing I was asking earlier, because I was reading this book, and maybe I'll talk about it later. Bell Hooks, The Will to Change, and it's a woman scholar critiquing masculinity, and she goes through all these situations and experiences of men that sort of break them and make them very harsh, whether it be verbal or physical abuse, whether it be the society around them, whether it be something like being in foster home, whether not having a father, all these things. And as I'm reading through this book, a lot of things that she was saying, it sounded like how you were raised, also being raised in a city like Baltimore. And the conclusion is, see, if you have these experiences, then this is the type of person that will be produced. And for some reason, there was a disconnect where you had all these experiences and situations that would make someone say, okay, this is the type of person that will come out of that. And yet somehow the kindness and the gentleness, I would even say some innocence and affection towards, as we're talking about today, more so up towards your children, that was preserved. Well, you can say that was part of your personality, but society can crush that part of somebody's society, a personality.
You're right, Joe, but it's not. It's a part of my personality, some of it, but mainly I chose to change my path, my thinking, and of course, with God in my life. And with what I learned through these models, like I mentioned to you, I seen it in their life, and they had hard times. And I tell you, I'm not trying to sound like so spiritual here.
Yeah,
I'm really not. But I know that's what got me through. We went to a TMF, or a Total Men Fellowship. There was a men's fellowship, a conference one year. Mm-hmm. In that conference, we were talking about men and fathers. And Bishop said, you know what, really, in reality, you really don't know how to be a man unless the Lord shows you. I forgave my father in that conference, because right then, all of a sudden, my whole past came on me in terms of what had happened to me with my father. And so that's what changed me. It wasn't just just the way I'm made up, but I think it's more so of just having a made up mind.
So I want to confess something. I don't think I've ever really told you this before, but I sort of lived in this in-between space of really loving the relationship that you and I had, but also feeling a bit ashamed of it for two reasons. One, a lot of my friends didn't have fathers, and the music that I listened to, like rap, not to blame rap, but it did shape the way I viewed manhood and so forth. And so being fatherless it's like sort of like a rite of passage, It made you to be raised in a single parent home. That was part of the struggle, so that made you kind of, more of the tough guy. But that was clearly never my story. So I felt less of a black boy because I had a present father. And then two, not only did I have a present father, I had a very affectionate father. And I rarely wanted people to know that. it wasn't until like college that I felt okay with people knowing that I say I love you to my dad every time I see him, and that we hug and kiss each other on the cheek and so forth. And it felt like that made you look soft, and consequently that made me look soft. And so I wasted a lot of time being somewhat ashamed of that. And I really wish I didn't waste that many years being ashamed of something that I realize now was so rare and so beautiful. I can count on one hand how many times I've seen you cry. And one time I saw you cry in a personal time. I don't think you wanted me to see. I kind of came. It was at Windmill. I don't know if you remember that. I won't go into detail, but I went out into the room and I saw you crying, and that was the first time that I had ever saw you cry. And I was an adult by then.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd ever saw you cry. And then I think there's only 2 other times that I saw you cry. One when we surprised you for your 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the other time was 2018 when Bishop died.
Yeah.
And because he was, in many ways, part of that gap filling for being a father figure to you.
He was.
And so I never knew I never asked about that. I don't know if that was, maybe mom has seen you cry more than I have. Maybe behind closed doors, you've cried more. But I've never, all of the times that I saw you cry were always in my adulthood. So I don't know if you've become more comfortable with crying now, or it's just if I just hung around for a long enough time, I would eventually see it. But yeah, was that intentional or?
Well, yeah, that was intentional. I don't want you to be me raising you. I would sit up here crying everywhere. I mean,
well, not everywhere, but I literally never saw you cry until I was like 20. I think I just graduated. I think I graduated college by that point. I just graduated.
Well, I cried a lot more than that. You just hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Your mom and I had cried together. And there's nothing wrong with a man crying. Not when the Bible says Jesus wept. And so if he wept, I know I'm going to cry. He made crying for us to release whatever we need to release.
It's always good to sit and you kind of every time we have one of these conversations, I learn something else that I didn't know. I think that especially my generation, we're so on our phones so much. We get so much of our information digitally that we feel like all the information that we need to know can be Googled, but there is information out there that will never be able to be Googled, and that is the stories and the history of our parents and our grandparents. And we should use as much time as we can, and it's a conviction of myself because I don't think I do it enough, to learn from people, our parents and our grandparents and people before, because when they go, the history and the information that they have can go with them too. It won't
true.
You won't be able to Google that anymore.
And not only that, Joe, it's just spending time with you, like you do. I want to say this. I don't know if you're going to air this or not, but I really appreciate you valuing the relationship between your mom and I, and your sister and your nieces and your nephew and your brother-in-law. Because once it's gone, it's gone. You know, we only live one life. And I think that we do so much in life that we don't value what is so important. Yes, jobs are important. Success is important. But nothing should, in terms of value, should be higher than your family. Again, it's God first, and then that's family. Because you never, once a family member is gone, they're gone. You never can get those days back. The time that you spent with us, it is so precious. I mean, we look forward to you coming. Even if we don't do anything, just you being here with us, taking time off of your schedule to be with us. Because life is a vapor. One day, I'll be gone. And that's not a negative. That's not a negative at all, but it's truth. And what you will have left is memories.
Yo, that wraps it up for episode 10 of the Flights and Feelings podcast. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Man, y'all stay safe and vigilant. And sometimes a little more vigilant than safe, right? Because we in different times, but there's still love, and there's still family, and there's still, despite what you may feel, despite what you may see or hear perpetually, there is still God. There is still God.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Atlanta, where the local time is 10:46 a.m. For your safety and the safety of those around you, please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened and keep the aisles clear until we are parked at the gate. The captain will turn off the fasten seatbelt.
Okay, I have two new obsessions that I need to share with you. Impress No Glue Press-On Manis and Impress Press-On Falsies Lashes. Trust me, these are getting ready game changers. Both require no glue, so there is no damage to your natural nails and lashes, no mess, and no annoying dry times. Just one step and you're done. Boom. Instant glam. Visit impressbeauty.com/presson and use code PRESSON25 at checkout for 25% off Impress Manicure and Press-On Falsies.